Richard Rawlings created a multi-million-dollar enterprise, but he was concealing something significant. The 55-year-old Fast and Loud actor recently spoke up about the sour $6 million lawsuit that resulted in his restaurant's closure. However, that pales in comparison to the revelations he made on his former spouses. And hold off until you know the truth about what transpired with Discovery Channel. The boss of the Gas Monkey is now revealing all of his dark secrets after 3 unsuccessful marriages and millions of dollars squandered. On May 4th, Paul Teutul Sr. was born in Yonkers, New York. Although he was raised in Pearl River, his house was not a secure area. His father employed severe punishments, including cattails, a whip that was intended to dominate rather than instruct, while his mother battled alcoholism. Emotional turmoil and shouting overwhelmed the home. Paul found it difficult to feel heard or protected. Childhood is not the only time when such an environment shapes people. It establishes the tone for all subsequent events. He discovered something else that gave him meaning, even if he didn't have tranquility at home, was attracted to motorbikes and machinery from an early age. He was drawn in by something about the freedom of the open road and the sound of an engine. In a world that rarely provided it, it allowed him to escape and feel in control. His profession would eventually be based on that early passion. However, it was only a means of survival at the moment. In an attempt to escape, Paul enlisted in the U.S. Merchant Marine at the age of 18 during the Vietnam War. He supported war, even if he didn't go to war in the conventional sense. He went abroad to give ammunition and supplies to soldiers in areas of conflict. It was a crash course in independence for a child from a dysfunctional household. The encounter opened his eyes to the world outside of his personal suffering. It allowed him time to think and taught him discipline. However, it also made its own impressions. Paul carried part of the burden of the war years with him. Paul was attracted to the rebellious vibe of biker flicks like Easy Rider 1969, The Wild One 1953. At this period, motorcycles weren't the only thing glamorized in these films. They shared tales of liberation and defiance about pursuing your own path when the world fails to provide one. Paul never forgot that message. In such flicks, the helicopters weren't only machines, they stood for disobedience and independence. Paul desired to lead such a life. Paul married Paula Leonardo, a classmate from high school, in 1972. In addition to his personal life, his battles with addiction also saw a sea change in that same year. He was already surrounded by drugs and drink by that point. His childhood trauma never truly went away, and he turned to drugs as a coping mechanism. Paula supported him. Even if it caused tension in their marriage, she supported him at the most trying times. He was collapsing by early 1985. He started coughing up blood at the age of 35. Blackout marked the end of his evenings. He occasionally woke up in unfamiliar places, without knowing how he got there. Over the years, he has caused over a dozen automobile accidents, the majority of which occurred on weekends when he was intoxicated. Addiction was taking the lives of his friends and family, and he could see that he was approaching the same fate. The pivotal moment happened on January 7, 1985. Reached the bottom. He said that he had given up on life that day. However, something changed. He promised his wife that he would make an effort to get assistance. Although he didn't get treatment, he did begin attending Alcoholics Anonymous. For 9 years he attended meetings every week without missing a single one. His life was spared by that decision. Paul continued to build in the midst of all the mayhem. He founded Paul's Welding, a small company in Orange County, New York, in 1973. He had a single Hobart welding equipment and a single pickup vehicle. That was it. He established a reputation by taking on minor projects, doing simple repairs, and operating agricultural equipment. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, Paul continued to construct. After growing his company, he finally relocated to Rock Tavern and took up residence in a 7,000 square foot warehouse. Orange County Iron was the new name for the business. One man with a vehicle was no longer the only option. A full-scale steel fabricating enterprise was involved. He specialized in decorative iron and structural steel. He established himself in the building industry in this way. However, something else was also taking place. Paul has a lifelong passion with motorbikes. He purchased his first motorcycle, a Triumph Bonneville in 1971, and then a Harley-Davidson Superglide, which he still has today. Although it began as a personal interest, it gradually infiltrated his company. He started creating custom bike parts within Orange County Iron. It was a minor side endeavor. Although steel for buildings still accounted for the majority of the company's work, Paul found that working on motorcycles offered him something new, creative, and intimate. By the 1990s, his sons Dan, Paul Jr., and Mikey had joined the family business. The impact of motorcycles continued to expand. What started off as a tiny part of the workshop gradually grew into something considerably larger. Orange County Iron was doing quite well in 1998. Paul took a bold step to meet demand. A second plant in New Windsor was purchased by him. It was 43% bigger than the previous warehouse, with 10,000 square feet. Paul made the decision to operate two sites simultaneously rather than moving the company completely. It appeared to be a wise extension. However, things didn't turn out that way. The distance between the two institutions was 20 minutes. Everything was more difficult because of the distance. It was the latter part of the 1990s. Cloud systems and smartphones were non-existent. Telephone conversations and face-to-face meetings were the main means of communication. People and materials frequently ended up in the incorrect location. The work was repeated. Projects were postponed. To keep things moving forward, Paul himself had to switch between the two locations often. These issues were not limited to the company. They forced Paul in a different direction. He made a tiny area for constructing motorcycles out of the facilities. It turned become a form of escape. The bike work brought clarity. As the steel industry grew more complex, Paul began creating something unique at home. In the basement of his Montgomery home, surrounded by welding equipment and tools, he worked alone at night. True Blue, a bespoke helicopter, was the project. In the beginning of 1999, he started construction. Only his own vision existed. There were no clients or deadlines. The bike has a sleek vintage frame and an extended front end. The name came from the deep blue color of the paint. Paul utilized a combination of parts he produced himself and parts he purchased from stores. It exemplified exactly what he always does: integrate design and raw fabrication. By the middle of 1999, the bike was almost complete. Became aware that he had produced something unique. It was no ordinary bike. It had the potential to draw attention. That October, he made the decision to bring it to Daytona Biketoberfest. It was among the nation's largest motorcycling events. However, he had to take it out of the basement before he could make Pure Blue available to the general public. To do the finishing touches, he cleared a tiny space at one of his steel businesses. Something fresh has begun with that relocation. Meanwhile, Paul was coming to a tipping point. The steel industry has high standards. The work on the motorbike was thrilling. Both could no longer be balanced. Thus, he took a risk in 1999. He gave his son Daniel ownership of Orange County Iron. Dan has spent years working for the firm. He was well versed in the industry. He swiftly renamed it Orange County Iron Works after seizing complete control. In order to collaborate, he restructured the business, eliminated redundancies, and founded Gabriel Steel Erectors. Now that Dan was in charge of the steel company, they could finally devote all of their attention to bikes. He established Orange County Choppers in 1999, transforming his hobby into a company. The store had its headquarters in Montgomery. His first action was to hire Paul Jr. As the principal designer and fabricator. Paul Jr. was a skilled fabricator who had previously operated the rail shop at Orange County Iron. Paul Sr. initially had low expectations. He believed that they might produce 3 motorcycles annually. However, when he took True Blue to Biketoberfest in October 1999, everything was different. The response came instantly. The bike was adored by crowds. It was notable for its strong craftsmanship, vivid color, and crisp lines. People wanted one, not simply appreciate it. Paul received significant commercial proposals. At that moment, he realized this may be more than just a pastime. He realized then that he had something genuine. In the meantime, Monster Garage, a program that starred Jesse James and West Coast Helicopters, had already achieved success on the Discovery Channel. They were trying to find a new reality show, something coarse, something tangible. They were aware of the two tools at that point. It wasn't simply motorcycles that Discovery wanted. Drama was what they desired. Additionally, they were unable to script what they saw in the Teutul family. On September 29, 2002, American Chopper's debut episode aired. It included the jet bike's construction for Laconia Bike Week. A motorbike project soon evolved into something more. In addition to the excellent work, viewers were captivated by the passionate conflicts between Paul Sr. and his son Paul Jr. They had actual father-son arguments. They didn't hold back, and everything was caught on video. The pilot became a smash because of the unadulterated enthusiasm. The ratings were far higher than anticipated. 27 additional episodes were promptly purchased by Discovery. Millions of people watched the show by the time the entire season premiered on March 31, 2003. Paul Sr. became a national celebrity almost immediately after the program. Prior to that, he operated Orange County Iron Works as a local businessman. In an attempt to establish himself in the cycling industry, he dedicated all of his work to OCC after 1999. Although he had a good beginning, American Chopper thrust him into the public eye. He gained national recognition. By 2004, OCC appeared in an AOL Super Bowl commercial. The business was all over. The two tools were as well. Their notoriety generated demand and revenue. Orders began to come in from all around the world, but their issues persisted despite their renown. Indeed, it exacerbated them. The pressure continued despite the rolling cameras. Paul Sr. scene was rigorous and severe. Despite his inventiveness, Paul Jr. disliked being in charge. Their disagreements went beyond the show. They were genuine, and each season made them more somber. American Chopper was already a huge success by 2007. Since 2003, it had been shown on the Discovery Channel, attracting audiences with a blend of real-life family strife and unique bike building. However, the show took a significant step in 2007. It switched from Discovery Channel to TLC. At the time, TLC was undergoing a rebrand. The network desired more dramatic, high-stakes reality shows that would appeal to a wider audience. That vehicle was a wonderful match for American Chopper. Although it already had a sizable fan base, the creators were able to reach a wider audience by switching to TLC. Additionally, Orange County Choppers was beginning to expand beyond bike projects at this time. Under Paul Sr.'s direction, the business began negotiating with well-known brands. They collaborated with NASA. For Caterpillar Inc., they were constructing special motorcycles. They were no longer only manufacturers. They were a name. The switch to TLC made additional merchandising possible. Model bikes, clothing, and even toy lines with the OCC name began to appear in shops. It was a wise financial decision that fit with the show's evolving character. A combination of marketing, engineering, and entertainment. Some viewers were concerned that the show's quality might suffer if it switched networks. There was a definite feel and appearance about Discovery. TLC was different. The worry was short-lived. The drama remained authentic, the production remained strong, and the ratings remained high. The show continued to provide what viewers wanted after receiving a lot of advertising from TLC. Exciting human drama combined with imaginative bike construction. Within OCC, however, things were disintegrating by 2008. For years Paul Sr. and Paul Jr. had been at odds with one another. The volume of their discussions was increasing. Their collaboration was deteriorating. Everything came to a head on camera that evening. Sr. accused Jr. of not taking his duties seriously and arriving late on a typical workday. The dispute quickly became heated. Junior retaliated angrily and frustratedly. He tossed a chair across the room after that. The cameras remained in place. The entire event was witnessed by viewers. Paul Sr. dismissed his son on air a few seconds later. At the time, it was among the most startling scenes on reality TV. It was more than simply a spectacular spectacle. There was a genuine rift inside the organization. Junior was prohibited from working in the bike industry for a year following the termination. A non-compete clause he had signed prevented him from starting his own company until April 2010. There were a lot of court cases that year. He was sued by Senior for ownership rights. Their private conflicts had evolved into business conflicts. However, Junior returned when the non-compete period ended. He opened Paul Jr. Designs, a store where he had complete creative authority. He invited well-known people, including former OCC staffers Robert "Nub" Collard and Vinnie DiMartino. For TV, the timing couldn't have been more ideal. When Discovery Channel saw what was going on, they acted quickly. They debuted American Chopper on August 12, 2010. Junior versus Senior. The rivalry served as the foundation for the program. As the tension increased with each episode, viewers were witnessing more than simply motorbike builds. They were witnessing a genuine family breakup. High-stakes build-offs were the focus of the series. Each team fought to build unique motorcycles for important customers or special occasions. OCC maintained its traditional heavy-duty aesthetic. With its strong concepts and clean lines, PJD took a more contemporary approach. Although both stores pushed the envelope, each event was surprising due to the disparities in their methods. The strained connection between Paul Sr. and Paul Jr. was at the center of it all. It was more than simply business. It was intimate. That was made clear in the show. It leaned towards it, in fact. A Family Divided, which broadcast on November 29, 2010, was one of the special programs that allowed viewers to see just how terrible things had gone. The youngest brother, Mikey Teutul, found himself in the center. All three brothers' interviews revealed the emotional burden they were bearing. The distance between father and son did not narrow in spite of the series' popularity. Paul Jr. saw PJD as more than just a bike-making company. It served as a proclamation of independence, a means of escaping his father's shadow and demonstrating his ability to achieve success on his own terms. PJD has already branched out from bikes by 2012. In the same year, Paul Jr. established PJD Studios, a creative division that provides branding and logo design services. It demonstrated that he was considering more than simply motorcycles. He had a long-term goal and was developing a brand. Paul Teutul Sr. wed Beth Dillon in 2007, during the height of American Chopper's glory. The show was doing quite well. Paul Sr. was becoming well-known, and Orange County Choppers was flourishing. His public persona took on a new dimension after his marriage to Beth. During a period when his business was flourishing, fans saw it as an indication of stability in his personal life. Beth appeared on the show from time to time. In a world full of tense situations and boisterous fights, she gave a sense of tranquility. She had been married for 15 years and had 2 children from that marriage when she met Paul. She experienced a very different life with Paul Sr., one that was full of attention, fast bikes and celebrity. However, things took a turn. Paul and Beth got divorced in 2015, having been together for 8 years. By 2011, Paul had begun dating Joan Bulger Kay before the divorce was formally finalized. His personal life underwent a significant change as a result. Joan was more than simply his companion. She immersed herself in his world. She eventually rose to the position of CEO of Orange County Choppers, sharing his love of motorbikes and animal rescue. In addition, she presided over the board of the Hudson Valley SPCA, a New York-based no-kill animal sanctuary. She provided some stability at a difficult period for the company. Together they advanced further American Chopper projects and started new initiatives including OCC Plus digital builds. There was also debate because of their mutual interest in animal welfare. Legal records from 2015 revealed that Paul had consented to endorse a dog food firm in return for supplies intended for Joan's rescue efforts. The transaction generated ethical questions and deviated from standard commercial practices. It happened at a time when Paul was already under criticism for his financial management during the unsuccessful American chopper revival. Allegations surfaced that funds meant for manufacturing had been misappropriated. All of this happened at the same time, creating a challenging image of a man attempting to keep his life together as everything looked to come apart. Complicating matters further were his ties with his children. Paul Jr., Michael, Kristen and Daniel are Paul Cr.'s 4 children, and the friendship with Paul Jr. was the most well-known of these. One of the most dramatic tales on reality TV was their aftermath. After years of conflict about work ethic and creative authority, Paul Sr. dismissed his son in 2008. Their disagreement escalated into a court case, and they were silent for over a decade. During an American chopper revival in 2018, there was a partial reconciliation, but the harm had already been done. Arguments that frequently descended into shouting outbursts on national television had formed their relationship and the original program. Paul and Michael, on the other hand, had a much more laid-back senior-like connection. Michael frequently served as comic relief on the show. He was still involved in the OCC world, but he avoided the main battles. Unlike her brothers, Kristen took a more subdued route, remained out of the spotlight and became a nurse. Daniel went in a completely different direction. He assumed control of Orange County Iron Works, an independent company that Paul Sr. had founded, and operated it on his own. Paul was a guy juggling celebrity, family and business, frequently with little peace in between, and each of these connections revealed a distinct aspect of him. Paul Teutul Sr. was going through some of the most difficult years of his life. By 2019, he had spent years creating a brand around custom motorcycles and family turmoil, and millions of people knew him as the face of American chopper. However, things were collapsing behind the scenes. His 38-acre Montgomery, New York estate entered foreclosure that year. It was more than simply a home. In addition to a spacious pool with a waterfall and slide, it included 3 bedrooms and even room for rescue animals like alpacas and miniature horses. As the vice president of the Hudson Valley SPCA, Paul had always been outspoken about his passion for animals and had taken care of several animals on this same property. The mansion came to symbolize his success after it was featured on American Chopper. However, it told a different narrative when it was put up for sale. It sold for just $1.65 million after being advertised for $2.9 million. The $1.5 million mortgage that was still owed on it was hardly covered by that. Paul had already declared Chapter 13 bankruptcy in 2018 by that time. According to court records, he owed more than 50 creditors close to $1.7 million, had almost $151,000 in overdue taxes on top of that. In early 2019, he's still owing over $871,000 on the estate after many attempts to restructure the mortgage. Paul was in legal hot water over a 2009 Chevrolet Corvette ZR1, as if the foreclosure wasn't enough. JTM Motorsports, a business that had altered the Corvette, sued him back in 2019. JTM claims that in exchange for their work on the automobile, Paul had consented to advertise their business on television. However, things became nasty when the programs never aired and the cash never arrived. JTM reported spending over $24,000 on parts, $26,000 on labor, and an additional $10,000 on storage costs. Paul was ordered to pay $30,000 as part of a settlement after months of back and forth, but he did not release the funds from escrow by the due date. In response, JTM requested that the court find him in contempt. The court concurred, was formally declared in contempt for breaching the contract. It was another indication that his financial difficulties were not confined to his personal life. Courtrooms were overflowing with them. Then, in 2020, one of the most recognizable aspects of the American chopper tale suffered a fatal blow. In Newburgh, New York, the original Orange County Chopper's headquarters closed. In 2008, This enormous 92,000 square foot structure was constructed at a cost of $13 million. It was not only a workshop, it was a desk. Fans traveled from all around the nation to see the production of the well-known motorcycles. The 2008 financial crisis caused a decline in the demand for luxury custom bikes, which caused OCC to struggle for years. In order to prevent foreclosure, Paul had already given up ownership of the building in 2011, but he continued to lease the space and operate out of it. Whatever momentum remained was destroyed when the epidemic struck in 2020. Retail sales plummeted, supply chains stopped, and the store was unable to keep up. Doors were permanently closed by March 2020. Nevertheless, Paul was not prepared to leave. He relocated to Florida in 2021 in search of a new beginning. He started a new endeavor, the OCC Roadhouse and Museum in Clearwater with Keith Overton. It was a daring concept. Situated on a 9.5-acre plot of land adjacent to Bert's Barracuda Harley-Davidson, the new facility cost more than $7 million. It had a live performance venue, a full restaurant with 370 seats, and decor designed in an industrial style. The museum, however, was the center of it. It included uncommon constructions like the September 11th tribute bike, as well as 2 decades of American helicopter history. Paul viewed it as a chance to get back in touch with his supporters and rekindle his enthusiasm for construction. Florida made sense. It boasted a robust motorbike culture and consistently mild weather. The bankruptcy, foreclosure, and legal disputes from the past were not forgotten when they relocated to Florida. It had all left its imprint, but it also revealed something more. Paul Teutul Sr. continued to strive for the next chapter and to create despite everything. It was still uncertain if it would be a comeback or merely another turn in a lengthy career. For the time being, however, he was back in the store, surrounded by motorcycles, and beginning over. After a 10-year breakup, Paul Teutul Sr. and his son Paul Jr. eventually got back in touch in 2018. The reunion was unimpressive. It was silent and cautious. They made a commitment to maintain their connection as personal rather than business. They both realized that they couldn't work together again after everything that had transpired between them. Both of them didn't want to return to the strain that had driven American Chopper for years. Few could have foreseen the changes that have since occurred in Paul Sr.'s life. He was once the face of a reality TV show and a worldwide motorbike brand, but his estimated net worth is now only $500,000. Compared to the millions he earned at the height of American Chopper, that is a significant drop. The celebrity, the goods, the bespoke constructions that brought in enormous profits. With time, all of it disappeared. A shifting TV environment, financial problems, and legal issues all contributed to the demise. Paul, however, remained involved in the world he helped create. He continued to concentrate on what was most important to him, building bikes, even as he turned over the financial side of Orange County Choppers to Joan Bulger-Kay, who became the company's CEO. He had always felt most comfortable on the creative side, and now that he was free of the burden of managing a business, he could devote himself entirely to it. He also departed from New York. Paul relocated to Florida, after establishing his profession in the Northeast's bright glare for decades. He claimed that it gave him a sense of freedom that he had never experienced before. Peace was more important than retiring or abandoning the job. He was able to relax and think in Florida, apart from the commotion and ongoing stress. That type of stillness was novel to someone whose life had been characterized by loudness, both on and off screen.